It's the Fraction. Welcome, Fraction family. Thanks for joining us again. Love to see everybody here again. What we got going on today was a crazy topic. I was on this airplane, okay, and I saw these kids, which at first we all know plane rides, kids can get a little crazy, get a little wild, but these kids in particular. We're doing cartwheels down the aisle.
No.
And so I'm looking at the parents like, all right, any minute, little Junior's about to get popped. But it never happened. And so 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by. I see a couple kids still kicking the back of the chairs, doing some screaming. I'm like, all right, listen, what's happening? And there's different cultures have different things going on. And this particular family just happened to be Russian. And so I just figured, maybe the Russians were tough and rough. I mean, that's just my perception. But I was like, yeah, they about to get it. But it never happened. And I know damn well if I was doing that, I would have got all types of things happening. So, kids' discipline is different, not only in culture, but it's changed a lot in 2023. There's a lot of cases when it comes to, I think of the whole beating. There's a lot of things people don't like about beating. But for me, I got a lot of beatings. I got a lot of whoopings, and I turned out all right. Yeah. So I don't know how y'all grew up and how, most of us here have kids, but how do you guys handle and think about child discipline?
Well, I would have thought the same thing with you. First of all, you probably were in a dance team's flight. No, I'm joking. I don't know. Doing all the cartwheels and stuff. But no, I was raised the same way. I mean, in the Hispanic culture, at least with me, it's all about respect. Obviously, you don't raise your voice to elders. It's always been like you basically treat elders with respect, regardless. So I got beat. And I mean beat and disciplined. I think there's a difference between beating and discipline. But I'm a firm believer in spanking just because it worked for me, and I know what it did to shape me up. But the way it was done in my household is you only got spanked when you deserved it, and they told you always why they were spanking you. It wasn't like they just grabbed something and just started whacking you. But it's definitely something I agree with. I don't know what y'all think. Y'all be laughing at me like I'm saying something crazy.
Because Carl over here is trying to get Sue's attention. Sue over here looking like... I'm trying to figure like, bro, what you doing down there? You ain't even got your phone, and my man's playing with his damn hands. See that type of thing. Yeah, respect. Yeah.
All right.
No respect, Sue.
To say.
Hey, you preaching. I'm just trying to relax.
Oh.
Bro, over here like this, I'm thinking like, yo, is he good over there? Being nervous. Doing your damn nails. Oh, no. See, I would have beat you for that. No, I had some wild upbringings, but you're right. It was all about respect, and I think, even something, everyone has their own form of respect, I guess, but, even the kids nowadays are still kind of going by their parents and calling them by their first name, and, that shit wasn't flying for me. No. I couldn't do that.
It was yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. And in Spanish, same way. Same thing. You said the word tú, which means you in Spanish.
Oh,
you got
does it?
Damn.
Tú.
Like, yeah.
I'm
like, no,
instead
it's
of usted.
Yeah, it's usted. It's a formal way to say it.
Yeah.
Usted. How would you say usted, like, in English?
I
want to know
how
how
you
you translate
that.
But it's just a formal word. It's only a word you would use for elders, not with your friends. Your friends you would call tú. Even if it wasn't part of your family, just an elder in general, it was usted, like a yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir type of thing, basically. And they taught us at a young age. My grandma would always say, I don't want you all to get the reputation of when we go out, look at those bratty kids. Like grandma would sit us down, or actually we were in the car, and we'd be like going to church, and she'd be like, y'all are gonna go to this when we go to church. Y'all are gonna sit down, and you better not make a peep, because if you do, just wait till we get home. And she would never do it in public, because she was like, that's to me. It was also disrespectful. My grandma would say that's not something you would do in public. But when we got home, Lord have mercy, she gives you that look, and you knew you were like, oh. And grandma would never forget. She'd be like, She's like, oh, so you guys go get undressed and go get the belt, and you guys know exactly what's gonna happen. She would say it with this like really sweet voice, and you're like, oh, it's even worse.
That's terrible. I don't think I've ever remember being whooped with a belt, but my mom would definitely threaten me all the time. She would threaten me all the time. She'll pinch me like in the car.
Yes.
When I would be sitting down, she'll pinch me.
Yes.
What about the chanclas?
She would hit me with the chanclas for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's a real thing. When
But I will say that I have done things differently with my kids. So with Jalen, I purposely did not whoop him because I didn't want to. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted to raise him differently.
Yeah.
But then as he gotten older, I realized that maybe I should have whooped him. I feel like he would have done things differently if he was a little bit more in line. But Gabriel, I feel like I do be whooping him when it's necessary,
Yes.
but it doesn't do anything for him.
Really interesting.
So I'm like, then I feel bad. So then I'm like, there's no point in me doing this.
And I don't know if it's like
It's
a
'cause the
girl
muscles
thing
is a little
or
suspect.
what, because my mom thought the same thing. She was like, my mom was more of a screamer, and it worked. My dad was like, quit screaming, just get the belt, swoop him, and get it over with.
Yeah.
You know, but the thing is, I don't know if it's everyone's has a different experience. At least when I got spanked, I knew that I deserved it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm being whooped, or I'm going to go to school and tell them I'm being beaten, because that wasn't the case. I knew I deserved it. I don't know how they did it or how to describe it in words, but it's how you go about to do it. Grandma would always explain, this is why I'm spanking you. She's like, I don't want to. She goes, but if I did not love you, I would not spank you. I need you to understand that. And that's what she would say.
I feel like that's what I do too. So like, spanking is not like my first thing that I'm
Sure.
gonna do, but I'm definitely a yeller. I feel like I definitely do
Yeah.
get loud, and they realize that I'm pissed off now. But I really do try to talk them through why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like,
Yes.
I didn't want to do that, or sometimes I'll react because obviously I'm not perfect, and I'll react and I'll spank them for some
Yes.
reason. And then later on, I'll explain, like, this is why this happened. I don't want this to happen, but, like, clearly I needed you to understand that what you did was wrong. But I don't know, things are so different now. There's a lot about gentle parenting, and I do try to incorporate that a lot.
If you really think
hard,
about
though.
the way things were back then versus now, at least in my experience, I feel like the respecting is a lost art. You don't see that in young adults anymore, or even children.
What do you think?
Like,
Do you think it's lost, or do you think it's because now kids can call like the cops on you?
that's the same thing. That's why that's a good point, because I think that's also has a lot to do with it. Not that children shouldn't have rights, but I think now it's being abused. You know, I don't think the intent was to create that that right where they can, you know, just report it regardless if they're being disciplined or not. If they're being beat, that definitely is a difference between being disciplined and being beat. But I
Exactly.
think that now it's giving children, and you know, I want to act up, I'll just pretend like they're abusing me and that I can get away with it. I think that could be what's getting triggered into their heads, at least from my point of view. Because like I said, when I was a kid and I got spanked, I wasn't being abused. I knew that. And I don't know how to describe it, but I knew that, and that's why I'm a firm believer in spanking, because it worked for me. And my mom always said, she goes, my sisters would always get jealous because I always got complimented on how I raised my kids. She's like, even to this day, I'm 40 years old, and she would say, people still come to me and talk about how well you were. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, really? Like, I don't see anything special. She goes, but I really realize now that it was in the upbringing. And my grandma said, you won't understand right now. She goes, but you will later. And I'd never understood. I would, in the moment, when you're in the heat of the moment, you're like, no, sir, this is not true. And then all of a sudden, one day it clicked. I remember I saw these bratty little kids, and I was like,
So what was the
that's-
worst thing you got like beaten with?
What's the weapon of choice?
Yeah.
Well,
What's the weapon of choice?
honestly, it was just always usually a belt.
A belt?
I mean, I remember one time we grew up working in migrant work, working out in the fields. We did sugar beets. Remember, Grandma one time got mad at me and she whooped me with the back of a hoe. Not the actual hoe itself, but like the wooden part that you hold with your hand, because she got mad. But again, I back-talked her. And that was unacceptable. And I remember that happening. And again, I never once said, oh, she's beating me. I knew I deserved it. And
I'm confused. You
Go ahead.
said you was just growing up in the sugar beets in the fields or something.
Yeah.
You was raised in the fields.
Yeah.
What, you almost sound like you in a cotton field. Wait a minute.
almost, I mean, it might as well have been.
So, where were you born again?
Idaho.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. I'm okay.
Well, and I think part of that also kept me humble too in the disciplinary part, because we were poor. But I didn't know. I never knew what that meant. During as a child, I never knew. I never felt that impact really. But it goes to show, like, even with the discipline part, like I don't know how to describe it, but it really humbled me, and it really made me believe and really know that they had a purpose for that discipline. Grandma was harsh sometimes. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, but I knew after I became an adult why she did it. And that's why my mom gets those compliments to this day. She goes, because people see how respectable you are. You know, even to this day, if I see an elderly person, it's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, that kind of thing, that kind of respect. And that goes a long way. And a lot of people don't realize that. And
But could you have gotten that yes, ma'am, no, ma'am from different avenues of discipline? So is spanking too far, or can you adapt and do more of the timeouts? Can you do more of the raising voices? Do you think you would still get the same result?
You know what? I don't want to say no, because I really do believe that there's several different approaches to something. Like, I look at your kids. You don't spank them, but they're very well-behaved children. So I will say yes. I mean, from that experience. But but see, Carla, the thing is yeah.
Are we talking about my children? Because I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. Gabe is just a lot of work.
But to you, I'm not saying children aren't. They definitely are hard work. But the point is where you see it the most is in public.
True.
Like, I've seen kids in public or
Doing
at
the
home
most.
doing the
Yeah.
most, like, oh my gosh, going
Telling you,
crazy.
little Jimmy is throwing a tantrum. He's saying,
Do you spank your children?
All right, I spank them mostly on when they have crossed too far to help get that. So like Jasmine, I've only spanked once, and that was when she drew on the wall. And so she's never drawn on the wall ever since. So that was one of those, was like, I'm not even mad about it. It's just that one of those, I got to do it so that you can understand
Yes,
it.
exactly.
And I think more of it in a way of like the stove. When you put your hand on a stove and your reaction is it burns and you take it back, that pain feeling, if you will, is one of those, all right, clearly you ain't going to do it again because your signals were going off. And there's certain levels. I'm not saying for you to have like a whole beat fest and you get a beaten ass whooping. You didn't necessarily burn your hand like fully to a 4th degree, but you know what I mean? Like it's enough. The rest of it is just that look. You know how parents give you that
And
look.
Oh, for
also,
sure.
I think that it matters. It makes a difference of how often you do it.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
for example,
Yes.
he's saying, right, when, like, clearly you have tried other methods and, like, they're not learning. They're not understanding. So they've crossed the line. Now you have to set a boundary. Now you have to be like, okay, I'm being serious. Like, you do this again, I'm going to whoop you. But if you're doing it every single day, all the time, because they do something that you don't like or they're not listening, like, kids are going to be kids and they're going to draw on walls. You know, a warning is appropriate. But spanking them every single time, I feel like that's when it becomes like beating, and that's when it becomes uncalled for.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a method, and I
Some
didn't.
kids they like to test your boundary on certain things.
Yes. Every child's different, so you can't compare each child. Like some children need more beating, and I hate the word beating because it's not the word. Some need
beats because there's some badass tendencies. As growing up, we all had some badass
And
tendencies.
I like to use the word spanking because I at least I can relate to words. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. So for me, I was spanked. Dad, yes, smacked.
That reminds me.
Snatched.
I remember my mom used to always, and it just like reminded me, like when I'm thinking about how I was raised versus how I'm raising my kids. My mom used to always threaten me, like, if you do that again, I'm gonna burn your hand with the iron.
Yeah.
Do that again, I'm gonna burn your hand with the iron. And I like always remember that it was a threat, right? So there was one time that Gabriel was acting super bad. I forgot what he was doing, but I said it, and after I said it, I was like, that's like terrible. I felt so bad for saying that, and I cannot believe my mom would say that.
Mom.
Yes, and I didn't realize like how harsh that actually sounded.
Yes.
Like, but I grew up hearing that all the time. So when I said it to Gabriel, I instantly was like, oh shit. Like, and Gabriel looked at me like, what? You're gonna burn my hand with the iron?
You didn't have that fear, that impact that
I was
mom
like-
had, wasn't there.
And then I had to go ahead and explain everything, but
I think the worst for me was like we got beat, and we got beat with everything that they could get their hands on. Like you're talking about like those wooden solid broomsticks. We got beat with those.
Damn.
Jesus.
My parents actually scared us with like knives. Like
Knives?
Shit.
that's
No,
insane.
I'm serious. Like they literally will come into you like this.
That's that Hmong style right there.
Yeah.
We don't mess
Straight
with that
up, like
Hmong
straight
style.
up, countryside.
That's why y'all be at
I
the
ain't
Hmong
never
tournament.
hear
I was at J
anything.
term and I was playing soccer, and you know everybody had them umbrellas, and they was trying to stab people with them umbrella things.
I ain't
Y'all
never
wild
heard
out
that
there.
before.
Y'all wild.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So my parents was one of those like we couldn't do anything, and like we got in trouble for a lot of our cousins and stuff like that too. But they like it. my parents was harsh. They were pretty harsh with like what they had in their hand.
You grew up nicely.
So now, what do you do
You grew up pretty well.
Now what I do, well, so
with
like
your daughters?
my kids can tell. Like I'm very chill, relaxed. But my two girls, they can tell. Like as soon as if I get pissed off or something, I just look at them and they can tell, and they can feel that. Like for instance, me and my ex's stepson, with him he's really been rough, right? And so he liked to test the water and certain things or do certain things and then go back to his like you tell him but then he still do it again, right?
Yeah.
And so, like it was just weird. And I think it comes down to it is parenting, right? A lot of times with me and my ex, we never really had that parenting where we'll kind of coherent,
Yeah.
right? Because she always thought that that's her son. And I don't have the right to say something, but then to me, it's like if you're in my house and I don't see that you're not doing what you need to do, then I will smack you or I will discipline you to correctly. But I never really have did a thing my parents did to us.
Yeah.
Onto them, like even for and.
I think it's different because I've experienced different things with like. Having other people discipline my children, and I think it's so many things that you learn. Like you learn like what's okay, what's not okay. Then you also kind of think about it's hard to have those conversations because I've talked to other people that have other partners that are involved in their kids' everyday life. It is guys do say it's hard when they feel like they don't have a say or sometimes they don't know if they're overstepping. That's a tough situation. But I feel like if you're going to be step parent to a child, whether you're a woman or a man, I feel like you should really consider first how the biological parent feels and how they want to parent, and then be open-minded to talk about parenting styles together.
Yes.
Because if your partner is like, yes, I'm okay with you spanking, okay, you guys talked about it and you guys are okay with that, but it would just depend. I feel like the communication there is essential, but that's a tough situation. I hear that from a lot of people.
And again, it goes down to your experience with discipline as a child, because like your experience, definitely I can see why you're going to change it.
Yeah, nice. What the hell?
I
I'm going to change that.
I'm going to need to go talk to the girls upstairs after
My
this.
parents like literally would beat us in front of like we had like family like events and stuff, and then saying my cousins were bad, but then like we got caught up in it because that was our house. And so my parents like, well, why didn't you tell them? And I was like, how do you expect me to tell somebody else or somebody's kid, and they're not gonna listen to you, right? So like my parents have like beat us in front of everybody to where like me and my brother would like just bloodshot.
Oh jeez, no.
That's insane. It's so crazy how
I
different
don't know
it is because I have heard, especially because you're a little bit older.
Yeah.
Kids that were younger, they would get really bad whoopings.
Yeah.
Like my mom, when she explains to me the whoopings that she used to get from her dad, like literally, I think she told me one time she got whooped with like a suitcase. I'm like, what the hell? A suitcase? Like, it's just so insane how different that has changed over the years.
Yeah, and I hate to talk about it because I hate talking about discipline is because like my parents, the biggest thing about parenting is when you get called out to be like somebody else, right? Like, why can't you be like Joseph, right? Or why can't you be like Sam?
Comparison can
look
really
at their
damage
family,
somebody. Yes.
Right. It's kind of like, why do we have to compare that with somebody else's family?
You're not that.
Am I not your child? Like,
Yes.
you're not mine. Like, why are you comparing me to them when they're not your children, right?
Right.
But that's all like in the foreseen, right? But like, you guys ever hang out with your cousin them, and you're like, oh, you're totally not what people think you are.
Of course.
Right? And
I've
so
had
now they're
cousins-
like,
yeah.
I'm like, nah, don't do that. Like,
and again,
Don't compare me.
it does go with like I was saying, how you were raised, and I think that's what some people choose not to spank because you either were traumatized and you know that yes, you turned out to be all right, but at the same time psychologically it might have really damaged you, and you're like, I don't want my child to go through that same
Yeah,
thing.
that's a psychological thing.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I think most of the spankings are.
And also, it's like proven with facts and research that kids at such a young age that spanking doesn't actually they don't actually take in the fact that they're in trouble for drawing on the wall. They're not getting spanked for drawing on the wall. They're getting like their little minds only like focuses on the fear. So they're fearful at the moment, then they may not do it. I mean, I'm sure she probably never drew on it
Yeah,
again.
no, but I think that's a
But
fear.
they focus on the fear versus the actual lesson that you're trying to give.
When you
But it's the fear that helps drive
Yes,
what we
yes.
need. And so that's why we don't put our hand on the stove again.
Yes.
So that's why we're instilling in that
It's
is
true.
the teaching method is a fear. Now, fear in itself has not always seemed like a great thing, but it is a lesson that helps us not do whatever it is again.
That's why it should, exactly. That's why it's like, it's acceptable for in that situation
well, I think there's
versus all the time.
Yes, I think there's a healthy form of fear, and there's also a non-healthy form of fear. And I think having a healthy fear for your parents, knowing what boundaries not to cross,
Exactly.
is healthy. But having a fear of like an unhealthy fear of like, oh my God, there's a difference between that. And I know I had a healthy fear for my parents, going, oh no, we know that's not right.
Exactly.
Right. There's a
and
different type. There's two different types of fear. You have the fear of like you're scared fear, and
Yes.
then the fear of respect.
yes, there you go.
And
I
that's
like, yeah.
that's the fine line between the two, and how do you get there? I mean, because something stupid and simple.
Nah, man,
like
don't say that, bro. I hate that because, like, the way our parents, if your parents is still alive now, and then the way you have grown, right, and now that you have grandchildren, they don't say shit to your grandchildren.
because their job's done. Their job's done. They don't need to do it again. They say I did my time. I don't need to. I can just be like yes, whatever, because it's on you.
But can I say something?
Unless you're still raised by your grandparents or whatever, right?
It's very unfortunate that you went through what you went through, but I have to say something is the way you come out and the way your children come out and the way you've come out and the way your children come out, I want to say something that I can see how amazing you guys have turned out. Each and every one of you. Like, you all have children, and I don't, but I see how I was raised, and I see when your children come over here, they're not causing a ruckus. You're not yelling at them. You're not after them. They behave, and that takes a lot of good, healthy discipline. And you may not realize that because you are with them 24/7, but I do because I'm not. And that's where I can tell how amazing parents you all have been. And that's how you know. I mean, you may not be spanking them, but what you're doing is right, which means spanking is not for everybody, but there's different ways to approach it. And according and the way I'm an outsider looking in on each and every one of you as a parent, I will say I'm amazed. I mean, look how we went to the Renaissance Festival. All your kids stayed with us. We weren't out there, where was so-and-so, what about? And I've seen children that are like that, and you're like, how in the heck can parents let their children get to that point?
Little Jimmy
you see what I'm saying?
Like,
so
Jimmy,
regardless if
here.
you spank them or not, what you're doing is working.
Yeah.
At least for me, because of my positive experience with spanking, I'm a firm believer in it. And only when it's deserved. Not all the time, and there's a way to do it.
Exactly.
And I don't know how my parents and grandparents did it, but they achieved it. And I've told them this. I am thankful that you spanked me. I know that sounds weird, but because I feel it worked for me, in my experience. And it was fortunate that I had a great experience. It was unfortunate you didn't. But regardless if you did or not, you came out amazing. And I think your parents, whether they did that or not, I think they didn't know any other way.
They didn't know better. And that's what we have to work with all the time.
Exactly.
But also at the same time, I think it's more of a cultural thing too. My father sat us down probably multiple times, and so I have 3 brothers, so there's 4 boys in the house. And growing up in DC, statistics wise, 1 in 3 will either be in jail or dead.
Yeah,
Okay,
I've heard that.
So he used to tell us that fact over and over, and we would always have to look around and say that obviously one of us isn't going to be here, so which is it? And that was always tough, to the point that he wanted none of his kids to ever experience anything police-wise, keep our nose clean. Obviously, it is what it is to this day for the world that we live in. But he didn't want any of his kids to have to endure or be in anything like that. So it was a lot of tough discipline growing up, just to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's, mind our P's and Q's. We had some tough ass discipline. I mean, it was one of the points where Dad even made a paddle out of wood, and he did a big little paddle joint, and he had to wear some gloves just to handle that wood because that wood was thick.
That was Joe's.
Listen, He had a rule. We were allowed to keep our clothes on too. He said, "You can keep your underwear on. You can keep your pants on." Okay, and I'm gonna let you decide. You either get 3 hard ones
Ooh,
or 5 soft ones.
I've heard that. My dad used to say that
And
all
I used
the
to
time.
always pick and think like,
my
let me do the
God.
5 soft ones because I just know I can handle 5 soft ones. And my dad's accuracy was on point. Like he would hit that same spot on that left
So
cheek.
it didn't
And
matter.
So it
because-
didn't matter. He would never pick. He would switch it up. I'm thinking, and and he would always tell me, "Hey, bend over a little bit because you don't want me hitting your balls, so you're gonna have to hold your
my
jewels.
God.
So when you bend over, hold it so it don't dangle and me hit it. Now,
Dangle and me hit it.
So I have to hold
Oh
it
my
and bend over.
This is
All right,
extremely traumatizing.
ready? He used to be like, ready? And
Oh my God.
we used to compare sometimes because there's plenty of times where 2 and 3 of us got beaten at one particular time, one after the other, and we used to kind of compare. And it was also things in that was pretty, it taught us to be together because there was times where Dad would ask, well, who did it? Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't really give a straight answer.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, all right, well, now both of you go and get
That's
it.
what I have to do sometimes.
Which was, which was in the long run, sometimes it was like, we just gonna have to stick together to get this beaten.
Yes.
But
Oh my
there was a
God.
lot of that. There's
Grandma
4 of
used to
us.
say, "You want a tattletale? Whoever tattles is gonna get it, and the one who did it is gonna get it."
Mm-hmm.
So it gives us, a whole don't be a tattletale. Like Grandma hated that.
But see, there's
Like,
levels to beatings, and like as you get older, especially for boys, the women just don't have that strongness after, probably like 9, 10, you start to be able to take them hits pretty well.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where Grandma was like,
I
I'm
can't.
gonna tell your father. We was
Yeah.
like, oh no,
Yes,
you beat
all the
me.
time.
You just beat me.
All the time,
And
yes.
don't even say nothing to Dad because we knew that Dad's level was just like, nah, you
A whole different
can't
level.
get that.
Like, bam.
Mm-mm.
I know that
Oh,
is
Lord.
tough, especially I've noticed with Jay. So now he's 12 and he's big as hell, So I have my reaction is to like just Jalen.
Yeah.
What the hell were you thinking? But then he'll like move his hand because he's like reacting, and his hand hurts me.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, but I gotta play it out, because I'm in mom mode. But then at the end,
Yes,
I'm like, that kind of hurt my hand,
Yeah.
and it's only gonna get worse.
Yeah,
So
you start to cross that point sometimes, and
Yeah, no, it's so true, and I think overall,
You better
it,
sleep
it,
with your
it
eyes open.
he ain't finna do nothing to me.
nah.
He's too much of
but
a.
you just need to
He's
get,
a
get
he's
them
a he's
workouts
a little
in, so
teddy
you
bear.
make
I'm not gonna lie, he's a really beautiful
I
child.
really just don't. I really try to talk with them.
Yeah.
I really just try to talk. So like with Jalen, he's older. He's 12, so he can understand and like really digest the information that I'm giving him. So sometimes I will react and punch him a little bit. But after that, I explain like this is why, this is what you did wrong, this is why this happened. This is how we can prevent that from
Yes.
happening again. Like,
Yes.
I feel like that is the difference between my parenting versus my parents' parenting. Because my parents would whip me, and then that was it. That was
You
like
never
problem
knew, like,
solved.
oh yeah, there was no like bonding or
Exactly. And when I'm wrong, because I'm not always right when I react,
right.
I apologize. Like
Yes.
sometimes I yell too much or I'll react too dramatic in
Yeah.
a situation that probably was not that big of a deal.
Yes.
And so I always circle back. I think that's my biggest thing when it comes to parenting.
But I think when you bond that way, it also teaches your children that you also are human.
Exactly, and that's
that
what
it's
I
you-
express.
yeah,
That's what I
and-
tell Jalen. This is the things that I break down to him. Like, I'm going to make mistakes. Even though I'm a parent, I'm going to make mistakes. But I'm sorry. I should not have reacted that way.
Yes.
I don't make mistakes.
I really do just try to keep it
Yeah.
a buck with my kids because I really want them to, like, really understand those lessons.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I feel like it gets easier once I get older. Like Gabriel, I can explain to him, but it's gonna go in one ear and come out the other. He's
And I
not gonna
think that's
understand.
important, and I think that's why I had such a positive experience overall. In the moment, it felt terrible because you're like, hey, But Grandma always said, and finished with this, because I love you that I'm doing this. And again, she would always say, you don't understand now, but you'll understand later. And
hurts me, then it hurts you.
Yes, yeah.
Man,
Oh my gosh,
that line
exactly.
used to
That
piss
is so
me
true.
off.
Right. But it is so
It's
true.
so
I mean, look
true.
at
It is now,
parents.
but
Yeah.
I get it. I think even when I spanked Jasmine for the drawing on that thing, I felt really bad. I knew I was going to feel bad because I wasn't mad even in that moment, but I felt like I had to.
Yeah.
Just
yes,
to do
because they
it
won't understand. Yep.
and be like, all right. Because I just didn't feel like the impact of sitting in a timeout was strong enough to be like, don't do it again. And even nowadays, sometimes when we do the whole, like, take away the tablet for like a few hours.
Ain't gonna really.
The little jail time that you do for that sometimes, I don't know, isn't impactful enough.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because I could never find the words to explain why I didn't think timeouts worked. And that's perfectly said. It's just the impact. It wasn't impactful enough. When you... It sucks to have to go back to this because I don't like using the word trauma, but trauma I think is too much. You don't want to get to that level, but I think you have to get to a certain level to be able to have them know, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And that's why when I sit there and I see parents and I hate to say, there's certain, I don't like to use the word racial groups, but there's certain, types of parenting in different, racial groups that I feel, why is a parent explaining that much to a child, especially in public when they're going crazy now, Sally, and it's just like, to me, because at the end of the day, I feel you're creating more of a scene while having a screaming child right there in front of everyone, and you're just trying to be all calm. It's almost like telling your child, oh, I can I get your permission to parent you? You're like, no, but that's why my parents said, you know what, we're just gonna go and we'll discipline you at home. That to me would be more impactful than sitting there, because then the child's like, oh, my mom's just going to talk to me, I can scream no matter what. But that was well said, because I often, how can I explain why I feel that spanking was, my dad would say, screaming takes too long. Like, they're not going to get it. Just spank it, get it over with, and boom, end of story. And all Dad had to do when we were in public, when we acted up, he would just say one word, or just say a few words saying, you want to go to the restroom? And we knew what that meant.
Exactly.
Like, no. Okay, then sit down.
I've had
and
to
that was
do that.
it.
That's what I've had to do, where I have had to actually follow through with the restroom discipline, because I'm like, I have to, like, lay down the ground. Like, I have to, because Gabriel will... Like, if he doesn't get, like, something at checkout, or he didn't get the Lego set that he wanted, he was getting in the habit of, making a scene.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to know.
Yeah.
Target bathroom, seen it well.
And I've seen parents where they're like, I won't go to the store. And I'm like, why? Because my child will act up too much. So you're letting your child run the show. You're letting your child keeping you from doing the necessities.
Exactly.
Because you're trying to basically
Like, who
accommodate.
is in control here?
Right, exactly.
It's a constant reminder. I have to tell Gabriel specifically. Jalen is so much easier because he's older. But Gabriel's like, I am the parent and you're the child. And I have to remind him, because he thinks that he's running the show.
Yes.
You're not running the show.
And then children get into a habit of, if I act this way, I'll just get what I want. I'll just throw a tantrum. Mom, okay, fine, no. And it's like, you have to understand that, no, like you said, I'm the parent, that you got to draw that line. And that's where I think that whole saying comes from, I'm your parent first, not your friend. Dad always said that. And,
I feel like I have such a hard time with that, because with Jalen being older, I feel like I'm a cool-ass mom, and I want to continue to be a cool-ass mom. No, I'm dead-ass serious. I'm a cool-ass mom.
I get it.
But I'll have to tell Jalen, like, Jay, at the end of the day, I'm your mom. Like, he'll, like, text me, like, when he's irritated about something, he'll be like, bro.
See? And that's why my dad would always say, I want to be your friend. But at the end of the day, if we label it that way, you're going to treat me just like your friends, and I'm not. At the end of the day, I'm your parent, and you need to know what you can and cannot say, what you can and cannot get away with me.
Exactly.
But I'll be honest, later as adults, my mom and I became best friends. We were already best friends then, but we didn't label it that way because she wanted us to know what lines we can and cannot cross.
Exactly.
And now that we're adults, we're out of the house, we talk about everything. Not that we couldn't before. It's a different dynamic, but there's still that level of respect. But, that's where it's just like, now I can be more of your friend because I've done my part. You're an adult now. So everything that you do now is going to reflect on you, not me as a parent. I'm just hoping that the morals and values I have taught you, that you will hopefully apply those. She goes, but if you don't, that's on you. She goes, I did my best. And she goes, now, we talk about everything. Any topic is not off limits. We can talk about everything.
I know.
But I think that there's certain levels, I guess, in the whole experience of being a parent that you have to wait to, you should get to a certain age to be able to act certain ways with each other. Like I said, there's still a level of respect, but as a child, you're still planting that seed for your child to understand, how you, even though yes, you're an adult now, I'm still your mother, so you still should know the lines you shouldn't cross. Does that make sense?
That line of respect, like
yeah,
when I think
establish
of
that.
I think of like parents, I think I can compare my dad probably to equivalent to Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh, yes.
Super close, similar,
yeah.
mixed with Carl Winslow from
Family Matters.
Like they're like
Oh, I love
parenting style identical, and y'all could probably say and think that Uncle Phil was dope. It was cool. He's a cool dad. So was Carl Winslow from Family Matters.
Wow,
Like you had so much respect for them, and you thought that they were cool, and so you could address them. We address dad sometimes as pops, whenever we necessarily needed to, as like a a friendly vibe growing up. But then you always had the respect for dad to never necessarily really need to cross the line. Like dad was always dad first, parent first.
Yes.
It wasn't until we got older. I probably was in college. First of all, dad was still disciplining me in college. I failed all my classes a whole semester because I was gaming, and
Things have not changed.
Oh, yep.
The life of Joel has not changed.
Listen, it hasn't. I was a freshman, and he brought me home and said I could no longer live at the dorms, and I had to live at home. And then he gave me a curfew, and I'm a sophomore in college with a curfew. I said, Dad, I gotta be the only sophomore in college with a curfew. He said, well, you
like that. Well,
get straight A's and B's, or pay for your own thing.
Ooh, God, your dad's so similar to my father.
I gotta pay. Okay. So, but you know what? That actually created more bonding time for us, and I got to really see Dad on even more different sides. So we created even more of a bond being together, and he became more of not just a fatherly figure, but more of like a brotherly mentor wisdom, where I always seeked him for anything and everything when it came to advice. And so that relationship started to bond and grow. And so that's probably what I'm also trying to capture the most when it comes to my children, is how to establish and get that particular relationship that they can come and bounce ideas off of. Because there's plenty of parents and plenty of children that have relationships with their parents, and it may not be on that particular level, but I want mine to be on that level to necessarily come to me to do A, B, and C like that.
For sure.
The really coolest experience, I'm getting teary-eyed, I'm so sorry, that's a beautiful story. But I think why I'm getting so touched by this subject and what you're saying is because I can see in each and every one of you the impact that your parents have had on you, regardless of what they, just from the way you guys are. The way you are with me, I think a lot of their parenting has gone a long way. Because you mentor me the way I feel your father's mentored me in so many ways, which is why I feel like you became one of my bestest friends so quickly, because you also remind me of my family and how my dad was with me, and you and my family, being Latinos and having the same, influences overall. It's just, you can see the success your parents, each and every one of your parents have had, regardless of what they put us through,
Hell yeah, what they put us through. It was some hell. Man, we ain't even had, listen, I went to school. I wanted hot school lunch. I didn't get hot school lunch. I had to bring my own food. It was some PB&J. It was ham and cheese sandwich. Everybody got pizza.
I wish that my kids were that. Jalen was that grateful. Jalen wants to bring lunch to school every day. I'm like, you have free.
No, we didn't even have that.
Food at school. What he does say that the school,
Mom said the same thing. No, you got free
but
food at school. No, you.
I'm like, just take that. But I do love how you mentioned that it created more of a bonding experience.
Yes, it does.
With you and your dad, because it's. I love how that ends up happening, because I've even noticed that with me and my kids, like I'll have them okay, no phone, no tablet, and they have a playroom, so I'll close the doors on the playroom. Like, you guys are not allowed in the playroom. You guys are in trouble. So they'll find other ways to entertain themselves, and they'll start coloring. And so then I start coloring with them, and now we're all bonding over our drawings, and we'll have a drawing contest. And at first it started as they're in trouble, so they don't have their devices, but then they're doing something else, and now I'm involved, and now the dynamic has changed, and I love that. I love how the bonding
Yes,
comes with that.
and it is definitely a bonding thing. Dad would always have those conversations with us. When my parents got divorced and he was going through a divorce, Dad sat us down and says, "You know what? This is not your fault. This is not your mom's fault. This is my fault. I want you guys to understand that. I don't ever want you guys to stop disrespecting your mother because your mother, had no fault in this. It was all my fault." So I feel that it is a huge way that fathers, mothers can bond with their children. Disciplining is a bonding moment. It is a way for you as parents to teach your children about life and good morals and values, because that does go a long way. I have cousins that didn't have that same bond with their parents. Their parents wanted to give them everything. I have an aunt that's amazing, very successful, but she didn't want her children to go what she went through, which is crazy because at the end of the day, she had the love at home. She may not have been rich, but that's what she wanted. So she goes, "I want to give my children everything that I never got, name brand clothes, all that." But guess what? Their children now, they're great. I love my cousins, but now I see, not only that family, my mom's the baby of 10 children, and I see a lot of my cousins that have the similar mindset. Their children are unbearable sometimes.
Spoiled.
Most times. Yes.
Results of spoiled.
Yes, exactly.
That's what it
That's
is.
from the same bloodline. My mom's sisters, showing the way I was raised versus the way she was raised. And I go to see is like, I have my nieces and nephews, and thank goodness my brother, distilled in them the same morals and values my parents did, and they're amazing children. They get the same compliments my mom got when she was parenting us, and I'm just like, wow. Versus my other cousins who you don't want to be around them. It's unbearable because their children run the show, and they're going nuts, and you can't even sit there and have a conversation because they're constantly after them. Which is us here. Children are up there. It's like you don't even know that they're here, because they're that well behaved. You did a very good job saying, "Hey, it's gone a long way." I don't know if I'm explaining myself right, but yeah,
I know what you're trying to get at. I think like the spoiling part is another entity in which parents can use to help cope or help deal with some things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think all kids are for sure different. For spoiling, we weren't spoiled for shit. I didn't even have a name brand cereal till I was.
Oh my God, that's exactly how my family.
I think it's more of like parents didn't know how to offer choices, right? Like you don't know how to offer choices. So, example, we went to Target earlier, right? And so I was asking my girls, I was like, "Hey, all right, so you guys have $20, right? You can go look at what you guys want and then decide what you guys want, right?" And most kids, cause it's gonna go through the aisle, they're not gonna get one thing, right? They're gonna get 2-3 things. And so now you're looking at choices of multiple things, and you get to choose what you want. And then when you get checkout, what's there at the checkout line? Chips, drinks, right? Snacks.
I want that.
So now, okay, well this is what do you guys want, right? So I do that with them sometimes, because at least I wanted to teach them not just being about being respectful and things like that, but money management, things like that.
The money
That's
management.
so huge.
Because if you don't teach them and you're like, okay, well, I'm just gonna give it to you or buy it for you, that's a lot of money, honestly. And since me and their mother's not together anymore, I've been doing that with them a lot more, just because, it's not that I can't give them what they want or they can have what they can't have. It's just, I want them to see more value. What, mom and dad's not together. This is how mom lives. This is how dad live. But the love is there, right?
Of course.
So the love is there. But now we have to do the right choices, because if we don't have right choices, then in life or when we grow up, how do we know that we're doing the right things of choice?
Well, and I think that's what discipline really is teaching your kid, whether it's teaching them morals and values or teaching them about mathematics and money, or it's all overall it's discipline. That's what what you were doing now is still a form of discipline.
Right.
I think
discipline is a form of teaching.
Yeah.
So so now for them they're more willing to actually open up with me, right? Which is really, to me, is really cool, because I want my kids to be more open up with me, right? Because at least that way, like I said, if I look at them in a certain way, they know my look, right? If my voice get a certain way, they know that, right? As parents, we know that, but go back to this, I think I want my kids to understand the same thing, right? I want my kids to understand that, I am your friend, but I'm still your parent. Right?
Yeah.
And so,
for sure.
But life is in choices is what you have. You can't have it all, but at the same time, you got to think about is what you need and want.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that fine line between parenting and being friends is you want to be their friend because you want to be able to, when you have a friend, you can come to them about anything. You don't want your children to be afraid of coming to you with anything. Like my mom in the Latino culture, we could never talk about things like sex. That was
Exactly.
like, so then you see a lot of teenage pregnancies and you're like, well, what happened? Well, parents didn't teach their children the ways to protect themselves, be safe, whatnot. So therefore, children, because it's a hush hush thing, they don't come to their parents and talk about it.
That's so funny that you say that because I feel like I've obviously so I was a teen parent, but I've noticed that, and I feel like I realized that. I feel like in the Latin household it's like, don't get pregnant at 16 before your quince, or don't get pregnant at 15, don't get pregnant at 16. Like it was more of a threat, like don't get pregnant,
But
don't get pregnant.
17's okay.
Well, but they didn't teach you what that meant.
And so that's a huge thing that you learn. Like you learn
Yes.
on how you want to raise your kids. Like Jalen has health class this year in 7th grade, and I'm just so thankful that he has health class because I'm very open with him.
Yeah.
I'm very open with him about everything.
Yes.
Everything that if I'm going through, like when I went through a breakup, I explained like why people have to make those decisions. Sometimes you connect with them and sometimes
Yes.
it doesn't work out. Or
Yes.
if you know someone that's struggling with addiction, you explain, what addiction is and how that affects you as a person and how that will affect your relationships. I try to be very open about those things. And I feel like that's how I want to be when it comes to sex and health
Yes.
and all of that.
Because it's normal. It's not a bad thing. We
It's
teach it as a
not.
bad thing, and I think that's where they get that fear of, you know what I'm saying? And my mom said, we never were taught that. And like when my mom went through the girl stuff, she was thought it was bad. When it happened for her the first time, she was like, got in trouble because she didn't, I'm sorry. But no, I'm just saying as listen to me. I'm just saying that we're afraid
you're good.
as a parent to talk about those things, and
It's
therefore,
true,
when you're
though.
a friend, you're able to come on. I'm going through this. But when as Latinos, we were taught that's bad, or don't talk about that stuff. So we thought it was something bad, and it's not. So I think
you're
that's
talking about like when you said going through the girl stuff. It took me a long time to figure out what the hell girl stuff. I was like, what the hell are you talking?
Can I
You talking
say
about
it? This period, yeah.
So
I'm sorry.
in
That's
Latina household, is that bad to go through a period?
No,
No,
it's
no,
just
no,
there's
not at all.
Open
There's
communication
no-
about the different things.
Instead
I'm still
of
trying to
instead of
figure
my
that out.
grandmother talking to my mom saying, "Mija, this is what happens at this age." She
It's-
goes, she got in trouble. How could you have not taken care of it? Just went on like, Mom, I didn't know.
I think that
Mm.
being knowledgeable is the best thing that you can do as a parent. So for you having daughters, I feel like the best thing that you can do as a dad, especially as a dad, is having space for open communication.
Yes.
You don't want to be, just because you're the dad and Kelly is there, only have Kelly have those conversations with,
Yeah,
with the
that's a
girls.
good
Oh,
point.
no, we had conversations. We had lots of conversations already as it is. I think we already changed the word usage. Because I think growing up, when they were little, it was hard to get them to say the right words. So we had identified, was like, hey, you got a front butt, back butt type thing.
Is that you?
Yeah, because it was kind of hard to get them to say the word.
I like
and so,
Oh, that's
you know,
cute though.
finally changing it from front butt and back butt. I think Sophia was probably 4 or 5, when she was actually going into like pre-K and kindergarten, to kind of switch it up and say, all right, because now that you're going to the bathroom and you have, teachers, I need to know these things in case anything happens. I need you to be able to identify. I forgot. I think it was a self-defense one when I was telling them about it. How to defend yourself if anybody does anything. And then that's when I started to identify, men have oh Lord, we're gonna go into this whole thing.
No, well,
a
it's part of the
different
parenting.
discussion. No.
No, but I get it, so I say-
men have penises, but listen, the other part,
Yeah.
not everybody has the front butt. So
Yeah.
we started talking about vaginas
Yeah.
and penises, and
Yeah.
that's switched up the whole thing. But now they're knowledgeable enough in it.
I feel like that's the best thing you can give your kids is knowledge,
agree.
and
Yes.
is really just to show them that we're all human and we're all going to make mistakes, and even though we're parents, like, we're going to also make mistakes because we're learning as we go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Parents aren't experts. I always have people, how do you do it? They're like, you just learn it. You're all first time parents at one point, and you just learn as you go, and that's why I think it's very important that, again, going back to that fine line, parents and friends, is being that friend that your children have enough can confide in you to come to you about anything, but still having that fine line. Well, I'm your parent, knowing how you can approach and what you can and cannot get away with. So, but yeah, no, my parents never talked about that kind of stuff like birds and the bees. I learned on my own, and I thought it was a bad thing too. And my brother, has very open. My mom kind of got shocked because my niece says they went to the lake and she's like, "Grandma, I got water in my vagina." My mom's like, "Kristen," and she's like, she's like, "Mom, we teach our children to be open about their body parts."
Of course, you have
and she's
to
like,
be.
"Oh, okay." And that's not something we were used to because, of course, again, we were like, that stuff you don't, But at the end of the day, my brother learned, there's nothing wrong with teaching your children. Now, they talk about, sex and stuff. Yeah, they're young, but not like that. But just in general, like they have questions. He goes, "That's not a bad thing. That's part of life. I want my children to be open with me and know, and it made so much sense."
It makes
and
a
I was like,
big
"Oh,"
difference.
and I see the success in his parenting. I'm like, we went to Pittsburgh. Children, my nephew 7, my niece 5, and then they have my little Aurelia. She's only like a year and a half, 2 years old, and they were like parents to their little sister. Walking around, they're like, "Oh, baby's asleep. Hey, you guys want to be quiet?" And we never once did my brother have to raise his voice. Never once did we ever like, "Where's the kid?" Never. And I just turned around, I'm like in amazement, like, "Oh my gosh!"
It makes a
and not
world of
once
a
did he have to
difference.
spank or raise his voice. And I'm just like, whatever he's doing, that is working. So of course, going again to is spanking the only way you're spanking. It's different tactics for different people, and there's several different approaches that you can take to be a successful
Yeah,
parent.
I mean that go back to like we want our kids to grow up to be good, right?
Of course.
We have them go to school because they have to learn, but at the end of the day, it's like we've been hearing it lately, right? Like school doesn't teach our kids, or they didn't even teach us those certain things.
But they
right?
can't either if you think about it.
No, but what about them kids that be bad as hell in class and that be like talking
Saints.
back to the teacher and throwing shit at the teacher and
Yep.
like where's
Discipline
that
again, yeah.
discipline?
Yep.
And like there's some kids that I feel like should have had a different type because I don't think timeout was for that particular kid.
Right.
But
who's
try to
doing
convince
that.
the parent.
Right, and there might have been some situation trauma because people might say, well, studies show that if you gone back and he could have had a different upbringing, if you just need to reason with him. No, that motherfucker needs an ass whooping.
Yeah,
That.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. There's a difference. There's a difference between that and then you're just letting your child. That's why I feel like maybe I should have spanked Jalen when he was a kid because but not because he's a bad kid. He's a phenomenal kid.
Yeah.
But he also grew up and raised by not just me because I was a young mom, but also by my parents. So he was raised by grandparents who are giving him everything and more. Like everything and more that he needed in his life since baby till now. So he just was kind of like a spoiled brat for a minute. So that's why I had to change my way of parenting him and actually had to set like real boundaries with my parents. Like you can't give them everything.
I feel like when you're separate parents, and when you're a separate parent and you're raising kids, it does affect that. Like that go back to earlier when I said with my stepson, with my ex, right, versus me and my girls, right. Like for him, he was testing the waters with me on certain things all the time, and it's kind of like, no, like I'm trying to help you so that you can grow in life because the life is not as easy as what we give you.
Yeah, I think there's a massive difference, especially for Carla, and so yours. I think I want to highlight on the impact of fatherhood and father figure. Not only, I think it's also different between a girl and a boy, that sometimes the father figure impact can be different learning wise than the mother, because there's some parts where the father things that the father can do that the mother really can't get to no matter how hard she tries. The impact of that fatherhood sometimes is just different, and for some they need that type of discipline. For me, when I was 15 acting up wilding in DC, I wanted to stay. When Dad got accepted a job to come to Minnesota, and I thought that, I'll be fine. Mom can quote unquote watch me. I'll be good. Dad was like, no, you at this particular point in your life, you being 15, you're going to need the impact of me more so than your mother, because this is the shaping point.
That's so amazing. Yes.
And I didn't like it. and I understood it later on.
Mm-hmm.
Which also at the time I knew he was right, because I was wilding, and I knew that the only person that could contain me was Dad. Mom, as much as I love her and she loved me, there's only so much that she can do to contain.
And I think mothers have a
Especially-
softer heart
They're softer
naturally,
heart,
you
right,
know, not
right, and that tough love that Dad was going to bring was a different tough love that Mom can. Not saying that moms can't, but there's still a little difference.
It's a difference, yeah.
Of
In
course.
that fatherhood tough love. And I think growing up, you know, would Jay be any different, even Gabe having that father tough love?
I think about that all the time because it is something that, you know, obviously they don't have. They're not with they don't live with their father. They may see their father, but it's not the same as raising. I feel like when it comes to co-parenting, you're really only raising the kids if you're having them on an even basis. I can't really say that there's other people raising my children besides me. And I mean, obviously my parents help me. But I feel like it does make a huge difference, especially in that aspect. Like, for example, right now, Jalen he's 12, so he's gonna, you know, he's starting to smell bad if he doesn't put on deodorant, if he doesn't shower properly. Like, there's things that I have to have conversations with him about that I do wish there was like a male figure to explain like why these things are important. So I kind of have to be mean. I'm like, I'm telling you, no one wants a stinky boyfriend. Like,
But
you
that's,
better,
yeah.
like, you really need to wash your body. You need to put on deodorant. Like, these are things that are extremely important. Good hygiene. I feel like although I try to stress it all the time, but it does make a difference. I feel like
Yeah.
it would, especially the older that he's going to get. Like you said, primetime 15, when you're like really becoming an older man, older young boy, and then you're experiencing, you know, like man
he's
stuff.
active. He's active.
'cause-
Yeah.
And I don't want to take away from the fact there's plenty mothers that have definitely, you know, raised many
Oh, of
children
course.
by themselves,
Of course.
and those children have grown out to be just fine.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take away the fact, not saying that it can happen, but I think there's
There's a
also
difference.
a difference.
There's a huge
in
difference.
things that they could have gained all along the way. Too.
Well, let me
Along
give
the
you
way,
let me give you an
exactly.
example. Even though I had Dad around, Dad didn't teach us how to bathe. Mom taught us. Mom taught us how, I hate to put it this way, how to clean our man junk. Not Dad. I mean,
man junk.
I'm serious. I know that sounds really crazy, but it's true. Yeah, my man junk.
man junk.
I don't know. I still feel really weird saying the part. I don't know. I should probably
Penis?
say it. Penis. Yeah.
You can't say penis.
You know what? I think it comes from, again, parenting, respect. I'm sorry. That's just it kicks in like that. It's weird, but yeah. So I think overall, Carla, I think that the difference is going to be, it all depends on the male influence that they have. If they have a mother who taught them, I don't really think, in my opinion, not just speaking for myself, it's all that relevant. Yes, I think it's nice to have the same sex to be able to relate to with certain things like that. But I think as long as you have a certain bond with someone in general, I think that makes all the difference.
I do too.
So-
That's why I stress the communication
Yes.
and the teaching and the learning and just being transparent on all the things that we experience in life, because I feel like that's the best thing that I can do as a single parent, is to educate them and have them be knowledgeable about things, about everything. Like, it's kind of hard. Like, last year, Jalen said that he wanted to go on trick-or-treating with one of his friends. He was like, well, it's a boy, but he says he goes by she. And she said that she's transgender. So I'm like, Jay, do you even know what that means? He's like, no. Like, zero knowledge
This
of
is your
any of
oldest.
that.
I always forget. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Jalen. So, you know, having to explain what that
Yeah.
means, because then you don't want to be out here ignorant and not have any knowledge on things. So I feel like that's the best thing that I can do as a single
he go by
parent.
she or she go by he?
One of those.
He goes by she, I'm pretty sure. But just like being knowledgeable and like explaining what those things are. Jeez.
Oh my God! You're so.
He's like, wait, so what is the real thing here? Was it a he or was it a she?
No, I just want to make sure what I heard. It was like,
I think it was a he saying it was a she, or I honestly don't know.
Perfect.
I don't care. All right, I was like, I was like, Was I hearing it correctly?
Perfect point. I'm glad you brought that up because I think that also goes to show, gosh, Carla, you could have been that parent that been like, oh my gosh, no, you can't go there, and, and freaked out and taught them like that's bad. Versus, oh, honey, do you know what that means? Whether you agree with it or not, if you teach your children not to be ignorant, at least they're able to give that next level of respect to someone that is different.
Exactly.
Because I was taught like being gay was wrong, and oh my God, my dad would not let us hang out with my cousins. My Aunt Rose, my mom's brother's sister has a brother that was converting into a woman. Not necessarily a sex change, but he dressed as a woman all the time. I don't want them around them. I don't want them around, blah, blah, blah. Taught us that was wrong. So therefore, when I started having my feelings of, I think I might be gay, I was scared. I didn't want to open up because they taught us that. So when you taught your son that lesson right there, hey, do you know what that is? You gave him the opportunity to learn versus what's the word? I'll push away and kind of create that tension. I don't know if I'm using the right words, but I think that was a great way of saying that's. I think that's a great thing. Yeah, good job. That's what I'm gonna say.
You may not know what, but
and of course I told him what the bad words are, and if anybody bullies his friends or whatever they define themselves as, he better support and take care of his friends because that's bogus. But no, I just really try to just genuinely communicate things because I feel like that's the best thing I can do as a solo dolo person.
And I think a lot of us are labeling parents as male, female, but I think the parent alone, whether male or female, is just like a mentor, someone to teach a child, to be there for a child, to help having that support, whether it's male or female, because I think in a parenting is an action. It's not just an actual given thing just because you gave birth to that child. You see what I'm saying? It's a skill involved. So I think kudos to you, because I think you all have a great foundation.
I think it's great that his friend actually was willing enough to express themselves out there at some young age, and he is learning to be accepted of it.
Yeah, and it's probably on the parenting too, that anyone who isn't quote unquote accepting is probably based on what parents have triggered or said about it in general.
Right, religiously and all that stuff.
Right, just exactly that.
Like, no, I would
a whole different thing too. With
I wouldn't want my kids to be that way. Like, I would teach my kid and show them, hey, this is what it is, right? But it's in a day, like, how do you know how that person really lived? Like, they might really need a friend.
Right.
That's what I tell them all the time, especially when we had that specific conversation about explaining what transgender means and what all of it means and pronouns and everything, how a lot of these type of people do struggle more because they're neglected, they're not accepted, and what it means to embrace those type of friends. So I thought it was really cool of Jalen too that he wanted to go and go trick-or-treating with them and is very loving to all people. That makes me really happy.
Now it's going to be important that we need to learn. So coming up on our next show, we're going to have your cousin come in to help fill us in because I love to emphasize and talk about LGBTQ.
That would be wonderful.
And
that would be great.
I got questions, and it's not bad questions, but just from an understanding. And I think your cousin does a great job of explaining these
She's very
things.
passionate.
That would be great.
Yes, I love how
I'm very excited
passionate.
for that. That would be wonderful.
She's a great person. And so I enjoy listening and learning a lot from her. So
Meow.
unbelievable. All right, y'all. It's The Fraction. Y'all know what it is. Tune in next time. We're going to holler at y'all when it comes to that. Deuces.